Hello, how is everyone today? If you're able to hear me, go ahead and type into the chat and let me know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very excited to continue making sure we are well prepared for the changes coming up in our industry in July. Overall, I don't think we have much to worry about. As you guys probably know, I have highly encouraged a written buyer broker agreement for years. I'm a little relieved that we'll have that because now I won't have agents calling me saying that, they went somewhere else, they did something else. We're going to get that signed every time. The removal of commission from the MLS is definitely a big change for us, but nothing that's going to kill our industry or commissions. So the overall theme is don't worry, be happy. Real estate's going to be fine. But you will have some different objections that you're going to have to overcome. So we're going to go over a lot of those objections today. We'll give everyone about 1 more minute to jump on and then we'll get started. And just a friendly reminder, this is being recorded. So hopefully you're okay being recorded. If you have individual questions that you don't want in the group, please contact me directly. Otherwise, every couple slides, I will check the chat, and at the end, we will open it up for overall questions. But overall, it should take 45 minutes to an hour today. I apologize, it's a little bit longer Zoom, but just want to make sure we get lots of talking points. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're not going to cover a lot of background. I did that in a previous Zoom call, so you can do that, but everyone knows about the settlement. You've probably seen it everywhere. The big terms were prohibiting offers of compensation in MLS. That's supposed to start in July. Just as a side note, I went through the last 50 listings that Red One Realty had entered, and I also went through the last 50 overall in the MLS. And more than 90% of them still had 3%. And this has been in the news. And we see it all the time because it directly impacts us. It's on our social media because Facebook or Instagram tells us that we're interested in real estate. But I don't think the typical consumer, it's as big a deal to them or in front of them as much as it's in front of us. So literally over 90% of both Red One and the overall MLS in Columbus, Ohio, still had 3% in commission in there, even though this has been in the news quite a bit. We are going to have to get that written agreement for the buyer. So we'll talk about a couple different ways to do that, how to present it, some common objections, and then what you can do moving forward. If you want more detail, please go to my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, look up Mike Hall Coaching. There's one that goes into detail about what happened, why it happened, and you also will get all the videos there. This will be uploaded to my YouTube channel as well, so you can always go back and review to it. So proposed rules, MLS participants working with the buyer must enter into a written representation agreement. This goes into effect in July, and it has to happen before you tour a home. And I know that's going to be tough on agents, and I know it's going to be a challenge for buyers, but we're already supposed to get one document signed before touring a home. Now, the question is, did that always happen? I know it doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen, but it's the law. It's supposed to happen. We're professionals. We need to get that done. That consumer guide in Ohio needs to be signed. In other states, there's documentation that you need. Some states like Georgia already have and have to have a written buyer representation agreement. So some of this isn't new in some states, and they've still been doing real estate in those states with this in place. So we've always recommended them. A lot of our top agents use them. And the biggest pushback I get is from agents. I say, well, did you go through, show them a presentation, show your value, and ask them to sign? And the top agents are like, yeah, and they sign. And some of the newer agents, the biggest pushback is from the agents, like, I don't want to have them sign. Well, now you don't have a choice. They have to sign it. And we're going to have a couple different options available for you. So we're going to talk about how to introduce the agreement. So we're going to go right off the bat and say it's required. And To me, I think the biggest miss for a lot of agents is not going through a presentation. And I know it's tough if you're meeting someone for the first time at a house. You don't have to meet them at a house. If you're out there and it's an online lead or someone you don't know, and you say, hey, let's meet at a coffee shop. I have showings right beforehand. So let's meet between 1 and 1:15. It sets the stage. You're not going to be late. You're meeting at a public place, which is better for security. And then you go there, you get a coffee between 1 and 1:15. Ideally, you get there a couple minutes early, pick out the table, get it all set up, and then go through a quick presentation there. Panera is great for this, Starbucks, your local coffee shops, and then go through a presentation before you show that home. I see people out there selling $100 and $200 widgets that go through a more professional presentation than some of our realtors do that sell $100,000 homes. Use a presentation. Let me just quickly show you. If you go to red1agent.com, you're able to go into our resources and make your own presentation. So red1agent.com, resources, and then there is a buyer presentation in here and a listing presentation in here. So let's just go down to the buyer presentation. And we are the real estate professionals. We should have a presentation. Oh God, please change that photo. We got to get that photo out of there. But to customize this, you'll just go in and you'll click on File, Make a Copy, entire presentation, and then it'll be yours. You can edit it and you only have to do it once. So this is a very long, detailed buyer presentation. It's geared to be that way. Some of the slides you probably won't use, and that's okay. So figure out what slides you want, what slides you don't want, but you're going to talk about yourself a little bit. You're going to talk about your career a little bit, talk about Red One Realty. This buyer's roadmap right here says, hey, here's where we start. We're going to meet. We're going to get you pre-approved. And look at this little part here. You're going to sign a consumer guide and a written agreement. And it's just normal process. These people don't buy homes all the time. The average person doesn't buy a home but about every 7 to 10 years. They don't know the process. They're relying on you, and you just tell them the process. This is what happens. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So I'll say, hey, we're going to sign a consumer guide and a written agreement. And once we get through this, I'll show you both those documents. And then you continue moving on. We start searching for homes after we have these required documents signed, make an offer. And then it goes through, I'm not going to go through all this, but you can kind of see it has a ton of information. Edit it, make it yours. If you don't want some of these in there, remove them. There's that 184 things a realtor does to continue to show your value, show everything that you do. But it kind of walks them through the process. So nice, easy presentation. And if you use a presentation, I promise you, it's going to be easier to get that agreement signed. If you don't use a presentation and you don't show your value and you don't look like a professional and you're like, hey, sign this agreement, you're going to get more pushback. So here's some talking points. It says, hey, before we look at homes, I'm required to give you 2 documents. The first is a consumer guide to agency. It just outlines that as a realtor, we work with buyers, we work with sellers. Sometimes we work with buyers and sellers in this situation, and you can outline. You say, hey, I'm only working with you or something along those lines. And then, of course, I will work with the other agent to get this done, and we can't discriminate. This form is required by the state of Ohio. Please sign here. If you're in Florida or Georgia, there's some other documents that you need to get signed. Make sure you say, hey, look, it's a requirement. We have to get this done. Please sign here. So you should have a printed copy that you keep in your car. You can also dot loop it over to them. If you're sitting in a Panera or Starbucks, you can show them right on your screen and send it to them via dot loop, and they can sign electronically. So this kind of opens the door. It's a real easy document. It doesn't commit them to anything. And we got a question. The requirement of a representation agreement, is that an industry-wide requirement? Yes, Bill, beginning in July, every single agent at every single brokerage firm has to get a written buyer agreement. Now, what that buyer agreement may look like at different firms may vary greatly, but that was part of the settlement starting in July. And in Ohio, I know a bill has already been introduced right? So it's one thing to be an NAR rule. I'm like, well, that's not law. But a bill's been introduced in Ohio. I assume bills are being introduced in Georgia, Florida, and the other states as well that says, yes, you have to have it. It will be there at some point in time. So we have to go ahead and start doing it. So we've gone through that and it kind of opens the door. It's an easy document. We know it for years. It doesn't seem threatening. This one, I do get pushback from agents, but when I was a realtor, I didn't get pushback from my clients. And I just want you guys to try it and try it now because you don't have to have it signed now. You have to have it signed starting in mid-July, but good practice before it's required is going to help you. We say, hey, the second form that is required is a written buyer agreement. It's required for me to start showing you homes. It is right now, according to NAR, it outlines what services are provided, the value associated, and how much the service is. I'm going to dedicate my time to ensure we find you the best home at the best price. And this is key. We're going to have the seller pay the commission. That's how I would approach this if I was you. I would say, hey, we're going to have the seller pay the commission because we're going to lock them into something. It says, I'm getting X%, and it can't always be 3, but it's whatever value you believe you should be getting. And then we're going to have them sign that. So we're going to go through that buyer agreement very quickly, and then we're going to go through some common objections. Let me see if I can find a dot loop. Let me see if I can drag this over. All right, can everyone see a buyer representation agreement on the screen now? Yes, perfect. Thank you, thank you. So this is saying it's legally binding. So as agents, we're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this, but it is. We got to let them know it's legally binding. We're entering into this agreement for the exclusive right to locate real property. And we're going to talk about an option we'll have for you guys that's non-exclusive. So we're going to find the easiest path to get this done. If you're that agent that says, I've never done this, if my clients want to get rid of me, they can. Great. We're going to have that option for you, but you still have to have something signed. So we will have an exclusive and a non-exclusive. So we'll go through a lot of that after I get through this document. Term, we recommend 6 months to a year, but you can put any time frame that you want in there. Talks about what you're going to do as an agent, talks about what they're going to do. I would say if you attend an open house, if you visit a builder model or talk to a for sale by owner, let them know that I'm your agent. If you're sitting there with them at Starbucks, give them a couple of your cards and say, if you go anywhere else, first, don't go anywhere else. Let me do that work for you. Let me do the legwork. But if you do, here's my cards. And the compensation, let's just say you put, 3% in there of the total purchase price. You can certainly do that and give them the ability to have a agreement to terminate it. So what I typically see is people are putting 3% in here for compensation of the purchase price and 1.5% to terminate. But this is negotiable. Do you want to put 3 and 3? Do you want to start that way? Do you want to negotiate down? It's completely up to you. If you were out there showing homes and they decided they wanted to work with someone else or do something else, would you let them pay you 1.5% to get out of that agreement? Maybe you would. Would you let them terminate for 0? Maybe you would. My recommendation is 3 and then termination for 1.5. Regardless, it says, hey, either party can terminate with the written notice, and then they'll pay that alternate amount up here. So whatever you put in there, they can terminate and move on. Professional advice and assistance, any other provisions, and I love putting this in here. Say, hey, look, I told you before we open this document, we're going to have the seller pay the commissions. So what I'd like to do is just get your permission to put in every single offer that the seller to pay whatever percent of the sales price to Red One Realty for buyer agent commissions, and put that in every offer. It's going to make it really easy for them to do it. We're going to say, hey, we're going to put it in every offer, and it's going to be a negotiating tactic in every single offer that we do. All right, got a couple questions. Confused about receiving 1.5. 1.5% typically going to be of the pre-approval amount. So if we go out there and we say, hey, we're looking for $400,000 homes, and we're looking at $400,000 homes, we have a pre-approval for $400,000. I put in there 1.5% of $400,000. So whatever price range you're looking for. Someone says, can we put in a flat fee? Absolutely. If you want that to be 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, you can 100% put in a flat fee. And we're talking about this section right up here for the alternate compensation, or if they wanted to terminate the agreement. So if you want to put $5,000 in there, you absolutely can. Can we charge a retainer in Ohio? It is highly, highly, highly unusual. It's not illegal to charge a retainer, but I think that if they talk to anyone and you charge a retainer and 99.9% of the other agents don't, I think that may cause you to lose clients. But if you want to charge a retainer and your client agrees, it's a negotiation, you certainly can. Renee says, does this agreement automatically require the buyer to pay the difference? This does. This makes them tell you the difference between 3%. So down here in this additional provisions, and we're going to talk about some of those objections, but we're basically put in there, if you're really getting a lot of pushback, it's a negotiation. You should say, hey, look, I want to make sure that I get paid 3%, and I'll let you know if the home we're showing is less than that, and maybe we don't go see it. But if you say, hey, I don't want to do that, you can put right in this additional provisions. In no circumstance shall the buyer make up the difference. So we'll cover a lot of those. Let me go through the questions here. So automatically no. What is the alternate payment for termination paid by the buyer? So whenever they terminate the agreement, definitely if they buy a home with someone else, right? You can say, hey, you bought with someone else or went into a new build or FSBO, but they can terminate the agreement and pay it, or if they buy a home with someone else. Is it likely to collect if they terminate? That is a great question, Sheila. Almost every brokerage firm will not sue a consumer. It's a really bad look. I've seen it personally happen twice, and here's what happens. One, the consumer makes an ethics complaint against you at the board and the division. So now you have an ethics complaint out there. Now, is it valid? Probably not. But do you still have to do it and go through the process and get all the documents and spend the time? Yes. And then if you actually file in court, then they're going to get an attorney and counter sue you. And then you have to pay your E&O claim right up front to counter sue. And then you typically settle. And then you're out all the time, energy, and effort. So as of right now, we will likely not sue a consumer over this. It's for the psychology of it. It says, yes, I signed an agreement. We're going to threaten. But to actually sue a consumer, it's a horrible look. They trash you on social media, every review site. You almost have to take down any Google My Business that you have. So we are not big fans of suing consumers. Now, to collect, yeah, we threaten, we send documents, we can have an attorney send a demand letter that comes certified mail. It scares 90% of people who haven't been sued before. And most of the time, I think they'll pay it when they get that certified letter or negotiate some payment to you. Next question, do you have to have this if you're holding an open house? No. Open houses, you are there technically for the seller to market the home, not required for an open house. But yes, if you're showing your own listing, yes, anytime you show a buyer a home, you have to have this signed. And if you're showing your own listing, some states like Florida don't allow dual agency, so you wouldn't be representing them. You could outline that in the agreement. Otherwise, if you're showing the home and you just don't want to be a dual agent, you can say, hey, I'll show you the home, but I won't be representing you. You can outline that in the agreement as well. If the seller is offering 2 or 2.5%, you don't care about the difference. Do you have to make them? No, not at Red One Realty. We let you run your business. And if you say it's 3 and you only get 2 and you're fine with that, we're fine with that. Step 8 is assuming the new normal is that the seller is still willing to pay a commission. What's the likelihood that they're still going to? We're going to cover that a little bit later about getting the seller to pay that. I think that's going to be the new normal, is that the seller will pay commissions. I think it's been that way. It's going to continue to be that way. And since the announcement, as I mentioned earlier, over 90% since that came out still are offering 3%. Of the 10% that weren't, there were, I can't remember, like 3 or 4 that offered 2.5%, and only one offered 2, and 0 that offered less than 2% in the MLS. So I think even though this is coming, the consumers have seen it, I still think sellers are going to pay commission. And almost every brokerage out there is going to put this right into the contract. So as a listing agent, it's your job to tell them, hey, yes, you're still going to need to pay commissions. It's negotiable. It's going to be in the contract. You need to prepare to pay a buyer's agent commission. So we'll talk about that today too. Perfect cut up on questions, entire agreement. It's on writing. We can't discriminate. And then they're going to sign. And normally when they sign, send them a copy and make sure that they have a signed version of it. So that way, if they talk to another agent, they say, hey, did you sign anything? And they say, oh, yes, I did. Well, then you need to work with that agent. A couple more questions. What if you're holding an open house at your listing, a buyer attends? How do you know if you need to sign? Open house, you don't need to. So open house, you do not need this sign. An open house is not a showing. You don't need to get the consumer guide signed in an open house. You don't need to get this written buyer agreement signed at an open house. This is just specifically a scheduled showing for a buyer. So no open house. If your buyer only has X amount to pay, does it need to be outlined here? That's up to you. So if you say, hey, you know what, I only have $1,500 and that alternate compensation, you can say, in no event shall the buyer ever pay more than $1,500. So however you want to structure this, if you're a Red One Realty agent, you certainly can, and it's a negotiation. And we have a negotiations class, I believe, tomorrow. Let me take a look. Yep, tomorrow. So we'll cover that as well. Can you speak to the seller paying commissions of certain loans? Not really. The FHA has and USDA has come out and said that they're not going to count the seller paying buyer agent commissions in the total allowable cost. So as long as you write in there, like this agreement says, where it says to pay buyer agent commissions, it won't count towards that cap. VA is very slow to respond. They've not put out any guidance yet. It's definitely the most challenging one because the buyer is not allowed to pay. I think the VA will come back and change their rules. I think this is obviously a big change. And it's just going to take these government agencies a while to adapt, and they have until July. So you guys are early. You guys are getting prepared. I think by July, we'll see VA, USDA, FHA all come around and make sure that it's still a good program for their consumers. So let's talk about some objections that your clients are going to have. Oh, I skipped forward a little bit. I apologize. So let's talk about objection handling overall. Why does a buyer object? And these are typically why they're going to object, right? Maybe they don't trust you. And that's tough, especially if you just met them. And if you just met them and you ask them to sign it, I would object. Like, I don't even know what you do. I don't see any value that you're providing. That's why you got to use a presentation. You guys should schedule it and make sure you have this done. Get that presentation tailored to you. Fear of commitment's a big deal. If you're getting that objection, you can make this for as long or as short as you want. And if they say, well, I had a bad experience with a realtor in the past, give them the ability to cancel at any time with a 10-day written notice or something along those lines. But unclear benefits, lack of trust, to me is going to be the biggest thing that they won't sign it. And both of those are easily handled before they're an objection if you go out and use a presentation. Service quality doubts, personal preference, cost considerations, individually one-on-one. You say, hey, look, I'm going to take excellent care of you. You can terminate, and you can put a cap in there. It says you'll never pay more than X, Or, based on your negotiation skills, you may not be a great negotiator and you may say, well, you'll never have to pay anything. Does that mean you may work for free on a transaction? Sure. Hopefully you're a better negotiator than that and you get something in there. On open houses, if you're representing the buyer and running the offer open house listings, you have them sign a represent. Yes. So whenever you are starting to represent them, yes. So if they visit an open house and then right there you are getting them to write an offer or getting an offer written later, yes, you then have to do that when you're representing that buyer. And you always have to sell yourself first. Question: since the commission isn't in the MLS, how will we address it in our offer? We're going to write it right in. So let me see if I can get out of here. Go back to our handy dandy. So in every offer, right up front, we're telling the buyer, we're going to put seller to pay 3% of sales price to Red One Realty for buyer agent commissions. We're going to put that in every offer. And we're going to get their permission to put it in every offer. It's going to alleviate their concern about having to pay it, because I'm going to say, I'm going to put this in every offer. And then they're going to know, the seller's going to see it. And for those of you who haven't done commercial real estate, this is how it's been done for years, and commercial real estate still exists. In commercial real estate, in CoStar, and Crexi, and Catalyst, and LoopNet, there's no offer of compensation. None, zero, zilch. In fact, in every commercial real estate form that I see, including the ones provided by the board, right in the contract, it states seller shall pay buyer agent commission of blank percent or flat rate of blank. So we're just going to put that right in here. And I think that's going to be very common practice. It's worked in a very parallel industry, commercial real estate versus residential. So we're going to put it right in the contract, just like commercial. It's happened for decades and been just fine. Bill's going to be getting the co-op in writing by the listing agent before I show the home. If you can do that, great. And that would be my preference, Bill. The problem is, if I'm in this market with a limited inventory and I'm out there and I'm showing the homes and that listing agent has 60 showings and 12 offers, me trying to get them to confirm the agreement, I think would be a hindrance. Should you try? Absolutely. Hey, do you have this? Yes, the seller can pay it. Yes, the listing brokerage can pay it. They just can't put on the MLS. So if you can get them to respond to you, that's great. I just want to make sure that we have a full-fledged practice that says, here's how we can do it. And if we don't get a response, we're fine. Yep. Looks like some people can still hear me. We good? Okay. Perfect. So we're going to put it right in the contract. I don't think it's the biggest change in the world. Instead of it being there, we're writing the contract. We're getting buyer permissions. Easy peasy. So these are some genuine concerns. And, I'm not a big fan of doing it this way. I prefer the old way, but we control, and we can't control this. So you're going to have people say, look, I don't have the money to pay your commission and the down payment. And you say, that's okay. With your permission, we're going to add that the seller pays the total commission in every contract. That way you don't have to come up with additional money to pay the commission. Is that okay? And I think for 99% of buyers, they're like, so the seller's always going to pay it? I'm like, yeah, seller's always going to pay it. Now that gives you the ability to negotiate right in the contract. So let's say it is $100,000 home and you offer $100,000 and you put in there seller to pay 3%. Now it's like they're getting 97K, right? Now maybe your buyer has to come up to 103 to get that done. And that's going to be part of the negotiation. If you're not good at negotiations, you're going to struggle in real estate going forward. You need to be a good negotiator. We're going to talk about two big things later in this to make sure you're a good negotiator. And then some other talking points, you can say, hey, there's some down payment assistance programs. If you guys haven't talked to Kyle Dines or Troy at Model Mortgage One, they have a better down payment assistance program than OFA. It's hands down better. Can we do OFA? Sure. Is it a good program? No, if it was the only down payment assistance program, the only way someone could buy a home, great, but it's not. Let them compare apples to apples. OFA and their down payment assistance program is just better. The seller can also pay concessions. Keep in mind with USDA and FHA, buyer agent commissions are not part of those max seller concessions. So they can pay 3% buyer agent commission and they can pay some money towards the buyer's closing costs. And then Kyle and Troy also offer a 1% conventional product. I think that's huge for you guys. You need to look into the 1% conventional product because if your buyer, let's say, only has 3.5% to put down, that's okay. FHA is so hard to get approved in a multiple offer situation. You can shift them over to a 1% conventional product, let them have 2.5% to pay as an appraisal gap coverage, where if it appraises, they don't have to pay it, but if it doesn't appraise, it helps strengthen their offer, and it says conventional. So if you're writing FHA offers, it needs to only be because they can't get approved for conventional, which may include they have a high debt to income ratio or a low credit score. You're also going to hear this. I don't want to sign an exclusive agreement. Not ready to commit to one agent. So from there, you can negotiate, right? You got to be a good negotiator. You say, no problem. We can make the agreement for only the properties I show you. You can certainly do that. You say, hey, if I show you a property, I'm going to be your agent, but that's it. You can say, hey, let's start with a trial period. What if the agreement was only for 30 days, right? And you got to show your value and how responsive you are and how you get out there and that you're a professional and you provide the comparables and values and really make sure that they're comfortable working with you. And again, it's how well you negotiate. You can make it for that property only, right? There's nothing that says it has to be for 6 months or a year or anything along those lines. You can give them the ability to cancel at any time. I don't like that. I like saying, hey, you can cancel with a 10-day written notice, something along those lines, but everything is negotiable and it's up to you. And then also, we're going to have a non-exclusive agreement. Our exclusive agreement is going to be in .loop and it's going to load with your templates. But if you want that non-exclusive agreement, it will be in .loop. You can utilize that. I just don't like it, but we treat you guys as independent contractors running your own business, and you can run it however you see fit. I just think that if you go through a presentation, you show your value, you're a professional, you really help them, you should get paid. And if you feel that, hey, if they want to leave it anytime they can, you can still give them that option. All right. What if it doesn't appraise when you raise the price to cover commission? That is a genuine concern, and it may not. And if it doesn't, it reopens the negotiation where both parties have to renegotiate. And what I typically see is the seller gives a little, the buyer gives a little, and then in worst case scenario, both agents give a little, right? So let's say, we're talking about $6,000 on a $200,000 home. We're talking about the 3% and it doesn't appraise for that. So maybe the seller comes down 1,500, the buyer comes up 1,500, and each agent gives 1,500. So easy ways to have all four parties do that. But I don't think the appraisal is going to be as big of an issue as it is. Because keep in mind, the seller's been paying for buyer agent commissions for decades. That's already been financed in. I don't see them trying to significantly change that when it's been financed in for decades. It's already been in appraisals. I think it's going to be common practice. So I don't see that being an issue. Now, if it just doesn't appraise because there's no comparables, that's different. Question: what's the best way for the seller to make a sign for 3% buyer agent commission? Will there be a contract addendum to clarify this? When you say sign, I don't know if you're talking about where, but you can put it in the yard. You can put a rider. There's lots of people nationally that say they're going to say buyer agents welcome as a way to say it. But also, we just can't advertise the 3% or whatever percent in the MLS. Right on the sign rider, if you want to put 3% buyer agent commissions, you can. I don't know that we're going to have an addendum to clarify it because we're putting it right in the contract. Right in the contract, we're going to say, hey, we want 3%. And then when we start talking about sellers a little bit today, we're going to show that we're still going to put most likely 6% in that listing. So it's going to be right in the offer versus an addendum. And yep, home definitely still has to appraise always. If we negotiate the buyer agreement for properties we show them, that means we need to sign a new one for every property? No, you can just say, hey, this is in place for any property I show you. And I think that's perfectly okay. You don't have to do it for every single property. Bill's going to advertise the co-op on all marketing outside the MLS. Yes, I highly recommend it. On social media, put you're offering 3%. I feel it's your job to get the broadest exposure for that client to get out there, put it on the ML, put it everywhere except the MLS. And we're working with KV Core. KV Core says on our website, they're hoping by July that we're able to go onto our websites and put that in there. And obviously some big companies use KV Core like Remax, EXP. I mean, it's a hugely popular platform. So maybe people will go directly to your website, which helps because people are going to your website. It helps SEO and traffic. So KV Core says they believe they can have that there. So you can put it right on your website. Question, will it be more common to call listing agent and ask if they're offering it? It will be. Yep, it will definitely be common practice. But I can tell you, I've talked to a couple of our agents and they're like, Mike, I'm overwhelmed. We had 60 showings this weekend. I have 13 offers. People are blowing me up and it's hard to respond. So yes, please go out there and ask. Yes, if you're a listing agent, please go above and beyond to make sure that you're answering everyone. But I know that it's not always gonna be the case. That's why we're just gonna write it in the contract. Yep, Renee, I agree. Once they're removed, the hardest part's gonna be the listing agent to do it. No, you cannot use the documents tab on the MLS. It cannot be in the MLS, even in the document section. It will eliminate a lot of phone calls if you had a writer right there on the property. I agree. No, it cannot be in showing time. I saw a lot of national Facebook groups that says, let's put it on Zillow, let's put it on showing time. And they specifically come out and said, you can't use a third party for the specific purpose of that. But they did say it can specifically be on your websites and the brokerage website. Maddie says, is offering 3% or whatever commission not a disservice to your seller, as the buyer may offer more to cover that fee? I don't think it's a disservice. I think it helps get out there and show it to more people. And there's a lot of buyers that don't have the money. So to me, my job is exposing your home to the broadest audience, and that 3% marketing fee to buyer agents and buyers who are now going to be in an agreement, right? Because they all have to sign it. I don't think it's doing a disservice at all. Now, if offers come in and I have $200,000 offers and this one says pay 3% and this one says the buyer's paying for it, well, clearly they're going to choose the one where they don't pay it. But I don't think that's doing them a disservice to get out there to the broadest audience. I'm going to raise that price by 3%. I'm going to say, hey, we're going to list your home for $200,000. Let's list it for $2,099 and we'll negotiate from there. All right, so we've talked about them not having the money as a objection. Great, we're going to put it in the contract. We've talked about not being exclusive. We will go all the way and have a non-exclusive agreement and every step in the middle. And, just some talking points. I want to make sure you guys are good with these. And I don't like the word script. I don't like the word, rehearsed, but you got to practice. And you should practice before you practice on the public. You're like, hey, I understand signing an exclusive agreement allows me to fully dedicate my time and resources to finding you the perfect home and make sure you have my undivided attention. And you can go even further and say, would you consistently show up and do a great job at your place of employment if you were unsure if you're getting a paycheck? This just makes sure I'm getting paid for the work I do, and I'm going to go above and beyond and tailor my service to make sure I hit your needs and preference. And it's just not a good use of your time to go out there and tell everything you need to this agent and then everything to this agent and again and again and again. And then they're not knowing if they're getting paid. They're not going searching off market properties, those Facebook groups inside the brokerage firm. You guys get it. It's going to be a better overall experience for you, buyer, if we do sign this and you have me working full-time to meet your needs. And here's some ones I would spend a lot of time on. It says, hey, do I have to sign an exclusive agreement to work with you? If you were working with me and I was your buyer's agent, yes. Yes, you have to sign an exclusive agreement to work with me. And it just makes sure that I work in your best interest. All professionals all have you sign an agreement before you're working with them that outlines what we're going to do, what we're going to get paid, and what the value package looks like. Can we say all agents are required to have this signed before showing? Yes, you can absolutely say this is a requirement as part of those first two. All agents have to do it. Yes. So do we even know that these proposed changes are going to become law? They're being appealed and the Department of Justice can reopen the lawsuit. So it is highly believed that this is going to be approved. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be approved. And the Department of Justice is a separate issue. So both parties have agreed to it. It seems like it's in the best interest of the consumers. Rarely will a judge not approve it. So I'd say that 90%, 99% likelihood this will be approved in July. Will it start in July? I don't know. Maybe they push it back 60 or 90 days. But yes, I believe this will be approved. I believe this will go through. Separately, the Department of Justice is out there saying, hey, we want to reopen this. And the Department of Justice has said numerous times they want to decouple the commissions. So I believe this is why the National Association of Realtors agreed to this, because this is the best thing for us compared to the alternative. So they said, hey, look, they're decoupled and now they're fully negotiable and there's no unilateral offer. I'm hoping that's enough for the Department of Justice. And I'm not scared about any of this. If I was worried about this, I'd say, hey, look, guys, this is something to be worried about. This just says sharpen your skills, be a professional, do some things you probably should have already been doing. Now, here's what would scare me. Imagine the Department of Justice comes out and says, hey, seller, you're not legally allowed to pay a buyer agent commission. That would be huge. This is why, if you watch my last YouTube video, you'll see it saved us. Hopefully it's enough for the DOJ. Hopefully we can continue on. It's no big deal. But if they do come back and the Department of Justice says it's illegal for the seller to pay it, that would be huge. That'd be ground shaking. And I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. So for now, we think this is going to get approved, high likelihood to get approved, and probably start a little bit later than July. But it's real easy for the MLSs to go in and click a button and say, don't offer 3%. So that's real easy. Additional questions. In a multiple offer, could we say buyer agent will match the next best offer of all terms? Match. I just need to make sure I don't lose the house for my clients if the commission is the deciding factor. The commission may be the deciding factor. It's negotiable. And if your buyer has signed it and it's only offering 0, 1, or 2, and you have it for 3, it could be a deciding factor. And that's okay. That's okay. It can be a deciding factor. It's negotiable. It's a term just like everything else. And it's up to you where you decide. Now, in those escalation clauses and things like that, it'll say, we'll match it net of concessions. So it does factor in the concessions, including costs like buyer agent fees. Question. Just for argument's sake, do you foresee this negatively impacting buyers, especially ones that are already having a hard time being outbid by people with more cash on hand for appraisal gaps, etc.? Yes. Yes. This is going to be tough for buyers that don't have money. But guess what? It was already tough for buyers that don't have money. I see people out there writing FHA offers getting crushed by cash offers. Cash is always king. The people that have cash, they have $300,000 to pay cash for a home. They also have money to go out there and pay their buyer agent commission. So yes, and if the people that have appraisal gap money are already beating people that don't have appraisal gap money, and the people that have conventional already beating people that are doing VA. So yes, this will definitely impact it. If you have multiple offers, there's likely going to be one that has cash or appraisal gap and now one where the buyer is paying the buyer agent commission. Yes. I don't always agree with our court system, as you guys all likely know. It's wildly crazy what a jury can do. I think the only person who won out of this was the attorneys. The attorneys getting 33% of that money, suing all of us for 3 to 6%. But we can only control what we can change, and we can't change it. Question. After mid-July, is it legal for a buyer agent to negotiate with the seller agent to ask if the seller is going to pay buyer agent commission on behalf of the buyer? Yes, 100% legal, and that's what's going to happen. You can ask the listing agent if they're going to pay. If so, great. You don't have to put it in the offer. Get something in writing from that listing agent. If you can't get a hold of that listing agent, put it in the offer and say the seller is going to pay it. Question. What's your recommended and also presenting the additional commission disclosure along with the consumer guide and buyer agreement at the initial meeting? I would just tell them that we go above and beyond and we store all of the documents. I will also make sure that come tax time, you get a copy of the settlement service agreement so you can provide it with them. And I like having some type of additional assistant. You say, I also get another set of eyes on this. So my assistant will look at it, and there's a small additional commission of $249. Sign here. Super easy, super simple. Again, these people, some of them never bought a home. Some are only buying a home every 7 to 10 years. Now, if you are, Jim Ross and you work with investors who buy homes every other month, that might be tough. If they're an investor and they buy it all the time, it could be tough. And I'm going to the coin event on the 16th and doing a presentation like this, more geared towards investors. Because imagine investors are out there, and now before your investors go see a home with you, you have to have them sign an agreement, because everyone has to sign an agreement before that. So these investors may work with multiple agents that don't want to be locked in. I can see them not wanting to sign an exclusive agreement, and we have that non-exclusive agreement if that's what you decide to do with them. Question. If you decide to take less than the commission you negotiate with the buyer after writing your offer, do you need to sign a new buyer representation agreement? You do not. You should put something in writing to them, because I hate when someone says, well, my agent said this and they said that. So unless they have something in writing, they're held to what they put in writing. So just a simple email to them that says, hey, we're going to do this for 2% is acceptable. Question. Any further info on if the listing agent is allowed to put under, let's say docs, there's something on my screen. What under docs, what commission is seller is willing to pay? Yeah, they've come out and said you can't put it anywhere in the MLS. So you cannot put it under docs. It cannot be in the MLS anywhere, unfortunately. That would make it super, super easy, but cannot do that. All right, cut up on questions. Let's talk about a couple more talking points. What if I want to work with another realtor at the same time? It's almost like being married. You want to be married to one person at one time, at least in most states that I'm aware of. So it's now a written buyer agreement is now required by all brokers in our area. So you are going to have to exclusively work with me. Again, I'm going to tell people it's exclusive. I'm not telling people we have a non-exclusive option. You can choose to if you'd like. Some people are going to say, I don't feel comfortable signing an agreement like this. And if you've gone through, negotiations class, this isn't really an objection. You need to uncover that objection. So you got to dig a little bit more. You're like, hey, I've found that if someone's uncomfortable, it usually means they haven't explained it well. There's some questions. What specifically are you not comfortable with? And then they're going to say, well, I don't have money, or I don't want to lock in long term. And then you can go back to some of those other objections. This is definitely a big concern. A lot of the things is, well, what if I just go directly to the listing agent? Some states allow dual agency, some don't. Florida doesn't allow dual agency. But I'm going to tell you, this is one of the biggest decisions of your life. The listing agent has a fiduciary duty to that seller. They have to work in their best interest. Do you really want a professional working on the other side and not on your side? It's like, you're getting sued and you use the person suing you as attorney. It just, they're not going to work in your best interest, especially if you're unrepresented. You're unrepresented and they have experience selling lots of homes. You don't. I think they're going to get better terms, making sure you have professional representation on your side. Couple more questions. Let me go back here. What about a seller is offered to pay a buyer agent commission? Do we just have to call a listing at each side? Or just write the offer? The listing agent will put it in writing to you in an email or on their website or somewhere that says, hey, we're paying 3%. You don't need to write it in the offer. I just think it's going to be so hard to get a hold of those listing agents. I want something that's in your control. You can put it in the offer. But yeah, if you get an email, if John Doe agent says, I'm offering 3%, that's all we need. We're good. Simple, quick email, text is in writing, just not verbal. Don't take verbal. Question: if the buyer agreement says you're working with the buyer for 6 months and decide the arrangement isn't working out prior to 6 months, what's the protocol? So the one that we have says either party can notify the other one in writing and terminate the agreement and pay the alternate commission above. So they can terminate and pay that alternate commission. It's up to you what that alternate commission is. I highly recommend 1.5%, but it's completely up to you. If you want to put 0, you can put 0. Bill, you are correct. We cannot put that attached document in the MLS. The attorneys have clarified and said absolutely not. And the agreement says that realtors cannot attempt to circumvent this process by using another third-party system. So they haven't came out and specified it, but to me and to most realtors and most legal people out there that have read it, said that that's attempting to circumvent the process by using a third-party system like showing time to do it. So they don't think that's going to be an option, but we are all waiting for those attorneys to come back and say, yeah, it's okay. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to say, nope, no showing time, no Zillow, no Redfin. It needs to be your website only or other marketing methods, not a third-party website. Question: have there been any discussions to revise our board of realtors contract, add a section that outlines commission similar to commercial contract, and what's the latest with the statewide contract? So yes, there's going to be a new listing agreement, a new written buyer agreement put out by every single state, every single board. I think Ohio is putting it out on May 22nd. So if you want to attend that, I think they're going to go over some of those things on May 22nd, and it might change again and again up until July. But yes, every single area will be different. And there is a statewide contract. I know Georgia does a great job with their statewide contract. The statewide contract in Ohio is a problem because it tends to elect that who pays title. And lots of realtors in Central Ohio don't like it. But if you're outside of Central Ohio, lots of people do use the statewide contract. It just seems like it's up for negotiation, where the Columbus Board of Realtors contract just says seller pays title. Question: does the buyer pay us directly 1.5% if they terminate, or does it go through Red One? It goes through Red One. Yep, it is a commission. All commissions in Ohio have to go through your brokerage firm. All commissions in every state need to go through the brokerage firm. Some states do allow people to get paid directly, but we got to know about it and make sure that we get your taxes correct. So we're going to say all terminations are going to go through the brokerage firm. Question: is there a do and don't list? There are a lot of new stipulations with the buyer agent, such as not third party. It'll be helpful to have a list. Yes, we will get that list together that says here's where you can and here's where you cannot advertise it starting in July. Question: will Zillow or Redfin call the listing agent and ask what the buyer's commission is and post it on their site? Right now they're treating that as those going to be a third-party site, and you can only advertise your commissions on your own website. So if it's a Redfin agent, Redfin agents can advertise Redfin commissions on their site. But as you know, Red One Realty listings go to Zillow, Redfin, Remax, Keller Williams. They're not supposed to be putting it on their site, but we are still waiting for other realtors to give us some clarification. Question: can you have the Red One Realty admin staff draft a letter with 2 columns down the page stating what's allowed versus what's not allowed. Yes, as we continue to get more information, we'll have allowed, not allowed, do's and don'ts. There'll be a lot more information coming by July. We'll change our processes, we'll change our templates and loop, and the board contracts, everything will change by July. Question, are these commission rules permanent or until the lawsuit is satisfied? As proposed, if they are agreed, which is likely, they will be permanent. It has nothing to do with the 4 years, $418 million. These will be permanent. All right, couple of questions. We're doing good on time. Let's just a quick negotiation story. Right before this came out, I was helping one of our commercial agents negotiate a contract. We had everything negotiated: price, possession, timeframes, everything else. The last counter offer we sent them, because they only offered 2.5%, and the initial counter offer, the last counter offer we sent them, the only thing that was on there was the seller shall pay buyer agent commission of 3% of the sales price to Red One Realty. And that was the only thing. That's going to be okay. It's okay to let that be a sticking point. They're negotiable. The consumers, the jury, the Department of Justice, everyone wants them negotiable, and they're now negotiable. You need to be a good negotiator. So you can negotiate that even if that's the last thing you're negotiating. We're going to get into part 2 now, more dealing with the seller. Let me just make sure we're caught up on questions. Put all your questions in there for the buyer, and then we're going to shift gears and talk about how this impacts the seller. Question, is any form to ask the seller to pay the commission, or can it ask? Yeah, there's no form, I think, to fill out a form to send to the seller agent or something like that. Just ask the listing agent via email or text if they're offering it. If you can't get a hold of them, put it right in the contract. Question, so can we put in the MLS agent to agent remarks the seller welcomes? That's a good question we don't have an answer to. I don't think we need to talk about buyer agent commission anywhere. I think that the other attorneys would allege you're circumventing the process by doing that. I think that the guidance coming out from all the boards and MLSs is going to be there needs to be no reference to buyer agents in the MLS anywhere. I think that is, they would say that we're circumventing the process. Question, can I put in the agent to agent remarks? No. Can you point to your website? No, they typically don't allow URLs in the MLS. What are you hearing as a broker as far as how other brokers are handling this? I'm in a lot of broker groups, like you guys are probably in Lab Coat Agents or, you know, mastermind groups. I'm in like independent broker groups on Facebook and things like this. The brokers are not freaking out. Some of the brokers are happy. They're like, great, my highly trained agents are good negotiators, and we're going to crush this. We're going for 7%. We're going for 4%. We're going for more money. We've been training negotiations, and we're better trained than every agent out there, so we love it. They also love it because we don't have to deal with procuring cost situations anymore, because now you're going to put it right in the agreement. These other brokers have wanted all the agents to have a written agency agreement and use buyer broker agreements. So from a brokerage standpoint, we're not freaking out. The other brokers aren't freaking out. What I am seeing is a lot of agents on like Real Estate Mastermind freaking out. They just need to sharpen their skills, be better negotiators, put in the contract. And I know it's some tough love, but if you're not good enough to negotiate your own commission, I don't know that you should be negotiating price for someone else. And you got to be a better negotiator. We're going to give you some ways to be a better negotiator. If you've never read a negotiation book, you need to. If you've never taken a negotiation class, you need to. We have both those recommendations coming up after this part. All right, last question before we shift gears to sellers. Any talk of shifting how commercial currently does it with listing broker compensating buyer brokers directly? Sounds like will just be an extra written agreement between each. It's done in the contract. So in commercial, it's done in the contract. So right in the commercial contract, if you go to .loop and you take a look at the commercial contracts, it's right in there. We're doing it the same way as commercial, but no separate agreement. We're gonna put it right in there. That is how it's done in commercial. All right, here we go. Shifting gears. You're now working with the seller, and we are no longer going to see, this buyer broker amount in the MLS effective in July. I think this part's going to be really easy. Will they back it up? Yes. Do they need to? No. They just going to say, don't show that. I am a member of Flex MLS in multiple areas, and Flex MLS is different. Matrix is different in multiple areas. So it's very customizable. I think that field's going to go away pretty quickly in July. So that, even though it's not in the MLS, the commission can be paid by your buyer, it can be paid by the seller, and it can be paid from the listing broker's compensation. So you can't ask the listing agent, are you offering it? And then if you don't hear from them, just put it right in the contract that the seller is going to pay it. And the good listing agents are already going to have this conversation and tell them, yes, you may have heard in the news that buyer agent commissions are going away, but they're just, you heard incorrectly. Buyer agent commissions are more negotiable than ever. Plan to see those in the contract. So again, use a presentation. If you go to redoneagent.com and go down and hit resources, you guys need a presentation. You can't sell $100,000 assets and not be a professional, not have a presentation. Go down to the L's for a listing presentation, and there's a listing presentation here. Same thing, hit file, make a copy. Please change that hideous photo. I can, and go down through here, and somewhere in here we've added a slide. And again, you need to shorten these, but it talks about setting the right price. It's just really good. We've added a slide that talks about, it's not about what you save, it's about what you net. And that is what we're telling sellers. It's not about what you save, it's about what you net. It's about the bottom line. So offering a commission by incentivizing thousands of salespeople is going to bring you higher offers. That's what we need to do. If you want top dollar for your home, find out how many agents are in your MLS. Every MLS that we're a part of has thousands of agents that are part of it that see this, and they're all salespeople, and we're going to incentivize them to bring the best offer for your home. But you will likely get a little bit of pushback, and you're going to say, hey, I heard about the lawsuit that I no longer have to pay buyer agent commissions. This is one you should practice before practicing on the public, and be ready for it if you're going out there to a listing presentation. So we're just going to tell them buyer agent commissions have always been negotiable. What we found is if we incentivize thousands of salespeople, you're going to get more activity and a higher offer. And that higher offer a lot of times can offset the small amount so that you actually net more money. Mr. Seller, what do you care about? The fees that you pay or getting more money? And if you have someone that says, well, I'd take less money if I didn't have to pay that, you're dealing with an irrational person. Those red flags should kind of set you off. That's going to be a nightmare transaction. This is an asset. They're selling an asset. It's no longer a home. They're selling an asset, and they need the most money for that asset. Walk through an example with them. I'm really bad at math. You guys know that. We say, hey, look, if we listed your home for $100,000 and we're not paying a buyer agent commission, or someone came in at $103,000 and paid $3,000 a buyer agent commission, you still net the same amount. Do you kind of get that? And walk them through that, because maybe they're not good at math either. It's not about what you pay, it's about what you net. That is your whole story when talking to sellers. They may also say, well, the buyer agent can just pay their own commission. And you say, yeah, they can. But here's the thing, Mr. Seller, many can't. It's my job to get your home in front of as many qualified buyers as we can. And they already have to come up with their down payment and closing costs and insurance and prepaid. So if they had to pay up to 3% also, it would eliminate a lot of people from your buyer pool. My job is to make that buyer pool grow so we get a higher offer. And if we get a higher offer where you net more money, would you then be okay paying it? That's what you got to get them to do. You can net more money. just some different talking points, and I'll go to the questions here in a minute. So this is going to help expand the pool of buyers by incentivizing salespeople. You're likely to get a higher offer for your home. And Mr. Seller, put yourself in their shoes, right? You have a buyer and you're getting 3% on this home and 0 on your home. Which home would you show first? What if they write the offer on the other one before they even get to yours? What if they would have offered a higher amount to get yours done when you netted more money? Do you want to lose part of that buyer pool? And then for those of you who've been in a lot of my trainings, I've told this story hundreds of times. I'm like, my wife likes to shop. She loves it. She goes out, she shops, and she's like, hey, guess what? I got 50% off this dress. My question for you is, did she get a good deal? And some agents in class will nod their head. And I'm like, no, she went to Saks. We don't shop at Saks. That place is ridiculously expensive. 50% off meant that dress was still $1,200. That's a $2,500 dress. No, she didn't get a good deal. Price is what people pay for. But our society really believes I get a good deal if I get money off, and they jack up the price and then they run these sales. And I get the psychology of it, but we need to get our sellers past that. This isn't a dress. This is a several $100,000 asset. We have to educate them. It says, hey, it's not about what you pay. It's about what you net. It's about the price. Let me go to our questions a little bit, see if we got any questions. Oh, yeah, Real Estate Mastermind is horrible. I hate all the anonymous posts there. I'm getting ready to start my own Real Estate Mastermind group, parentheses, no anonymous, just because I can't even go there because of all the anonymous stuff. Bill says, tell a seller pushes back on the co-op. Do you want to list it? There's something that keeps popping up on the street. Do you want to list it to sit or list it to sell? I like that, Bill. All right, so you guys got to sharpen your skills. If you're having a hard time negotiating and you're like, I'm really uncomfortable with, that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Work towards getting more comfortable. Make sure that you're getting better at it. So we have a negotiations class tomorrow at 6 p.m. It's on Zoom. It's our weekly Survive and Thrive. We're going to be covering some of the negotiations regarding some of the fallout from this settlement. Be a better negotiator. We're going to go through the psychology of negotiations. And we've been teaching this negotiation class since we opened. If you haven't been through a negotiations class, you got to sit through this one. It will also be recorded. It'll be put in our Facebook groups the following day. Please be a better negotiator. If you're not a good negotiator, change that. I've seen people that say, I'm just not a good negotiator. People aren't born a good negotiator. They become a good negotiator. And you can become a good negotiator. Put the time in. Also, most states are putting out their own buyer representation agreements and having a class on it. Check your state, find out that date's out there yet. Make sure you RSVP. Most of them are via Zoom. I know in Ohio, it's May 22nd at 10:30 a.m. So they're hoping to have their new buyer broker agreement done, be able to roll that out and give some additional tips. You are a product of your environment. If you're on this call and your state call and anywhere except that horrible group that they're crying because there's a little bit of change, you can be a professional and you can get through this. And there's a book out there by Chris Voss called Never Split the Difference. Go get the book. Listen to it on Audible. Start making sure you're a better negotiator. If you're a good negotiator, you're going to be fine. If you struggle at negotiations, you may help someone buy a home and get paid nothing. You say, oh yeah, we're going to go out there and you can cancel this at any time. And there's 0 alternate fee. And if you want to be it for this home only, because I got to get this signed, great. You're not a good negotiator. You're super nice and that's great. But when they say, I want to buy this home, and if it's offering 0, you still have to represent that person. It's a license law violation for you to come back and say, well, I can't be your agent because I'm not getting paid. It's too late. And I know you want to be nice, so you can be fair as you want to, and if you're fine every once in a while representing someone for no cost, that's okay too. Just make sure you know you have to represent them. Just the last couple slides here, and then we're going to wrap up. I'm going to go to the questions. Please put any questions in the comments. We'll wrap up with that. But keep running your business. Don't have paralysis by analysis. Don't think too much into this. Keep prospecting. Easy fixes here about what you want to put in that written agreement. Easy fixes about making sure that we still do what we've done from a listing standpoint. Keep building your brand. We have lots of classes. That YouTube channel, my call coaching, everything I'm doing, I'm putting on there. I'm putting it there first. This will be recorded and put there as well. Make sure you're looking at your return on investment. If you're not a Red One agent and you're paying your broker $15,000, $21,000, $24,000, is your broker worth that much? Stay focused on the right actions. And here's what I tell everyone every time. Those that work on their business and put the time in will be the next group of top performers. Those people who struggled and didn't put the time in 2008, 9, 10, get out of the business. And those people who elevated their game and perfected their craft are the top performers today. Same thing here. We're going to see some people get out of this business. Some people that are part-time, they can't negotiate, that aren't putting the work in, that aren't on calls like this, are going to get out of the business. And that's okay. There's too many realtors out there as is. If they get out, the next group of top performers, 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, could be you. Keep putting the time in. We're going to go through questions and we're going to wrap up today. Thank you guys very much. I know you're very busy. I know your time is valuable, but we want to continue adding value at Red One Realty. We're going to make sure you're prepared for this. It's not coming until July, but if you start practicing now and you mess it up, you're like, okay, don't worry about it. Don't sign it. It'll be a learning experience for you when it is required in July. And I don't want to be the one calling you saying, hey, there's a complaint at the division. You didn't get the consumer guide signed. You didn't get the written buyer agreement signed. When those things are there, I don't know what the division is going to do. It's new, but if it becomes a law and you violate a license law, I don't know what's going to happen, but the division is going to come out and set an example with some people. I do know that. All right, let's go to questions. Don't I explain the chances of the buyer that asked you to pay anyway? So put it in the offer. Agree. Put it right in the offer. It's going to come in there. The Art of the Deal is a good book as well. Thank you. Any other book recommendations? Please put those in the chats. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you. Thank you. We're here. We're going to have more events. Please plug into our training program. If anything, this should be something that says we're going to be better professionals. We're going to make sure that we have more transparency. And if you're very confident in what you can do, it's going to show through and it'll help you take your business to the next level. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.